The comment appeared under my post before I could even lock my phone. False information. I stared at those two words for several seconds. Then I looked at the post again. Single and available. It had been a joke. At least, that was what I had told myself when I typed it. I had posted it at 11:47 that night after watching my wife walk into a charity gala with another man while pretending she barely knew me. I hadn't expected her to respond. She almost never commented on my social media. She didn't even like my posts. But there it was. Her verified account. Vivian Luo, CEO of Meridian Holdings. My wife. The woman who could silence a boardroom with one look. The woman who had spent 3 years keeping our marriage hidden from the entire business world. And the woman who had just publicly declared that I was lying about being single. My phone vibrated again. A private message. Vivian, delete it. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because somehow, after everything that had happened that evening, that was still what mattered to her. I typed slowly. Me, why? The typing indicator appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, Vivian, because you're not single. I stared at the screen. 3 years. 3 years of being her husband. 3 years of eating dinner alone while she worked until midnight. 3 years of standing outside the elevator at her company because I wasn't allowed to use the executive entrance. 3 years of hearing people call her the most eligible woman in the city while I smiled silently from the shadows. And now she cared about whether I was technically available. I put my phone down. For the first time that night, I didn't answer her. The gala had started 6 hours earlier. Vivian had told me not to attend. You wouldn't enjoy it, she'd said while fixing her cufflinks in the mirror. I remembered standing behind her. I don't need to enjoy it. I just want to spend one evening with my wife. She had paused. Then she said, there will be investors there. I understood what she meant. You don't belong there. So I stayed home. Until my younger sister sent me a picture. Vivian was standing beneath the crystal chandeliers, smiling beside Adrian Chun, the heir to a major investment group. His hand was resting lightly against her back. The caption beneath the photo read, Meridian's queen and the man rumored to be her future partner. I had waited for Vivian to call. She didn't. Instead, at 10:36, I received a message from her assistant. Mr. Shun, please don't come to the gala. Ms. Luo is busy tonight. That sentence hurt more than the photograph. Because her assistant hadn't called me Mr. Luo. She called me Mr. Shun. My wife's surname had never been mine publicly. When we married, Vivian had said she needed privacy. I believed her. When she said her family would never accept me, I believed her. When she promised that one day, when Meridian Holdings was stable, she would tell everyone, I believed her. I had believed every excuse because loving someone had made me patient. Too patient. At midnight, I finally posted those 3 words. Single and available. It was childish, petty, maybe even unfair. But after 3 years of being treated like a secret, I wanted to know what it felt like to be honest. Then Vivian replied, false information. I picked up my phone again. This time, I didn't feel angry. I felt tired. I opened our chat. My last message to her from 3 days earlier was still there. I made your favorite soup. Are you coming home? No reply. Below it was a message from her this morning. Don't wait for me tonight. That was all. I typed one sentence. Me. Then tell everyone who I really am. The typing indicator appeared immediately, then vanished. 5 minutes passed. 10. Finally, she called. I watched her name flash across my screen. My wife. I nearly answered. Nearly. But then I remembered her walking into that gala beside Adrian. I remembered the assistant's message. And I remembered how many times I had been told to wait. So I turned my phone face down. For the first time in 3 years, I let my wife wait for me. She came home at 2:13 in the morning. I heard the front door open. Usually, I would have gone downstairs. Usually, I would have warmed food for her, asked how the meeting went, and pretended I hadn't spent the entire evening wondering whether she would come home. That night, I stayed in bed. A few minutes later, the bedroom door opened. Vivian stood there. She had changed out of her gala dress. Her hair was slightly messy, and the exhaustion on her face made her look younger than the woman everyone feared in business meetings. You ignored my calls. I looked at the ceiling. I was asleep. Don't lie. I turned toward her. You know what's strange? What? 3 years ago, you could tell when I was lying. She frowned. What does that mean? It means you used to pay attention. Silence filled the room. She walked closer. About the post. I know. You need to delete it. Why? Because people are already talking. I smiled faintly. People have been talking about us for 3 years. Her expression hardened. You know why we kept the marriage private? Yes. My family wouldn't accept me. Exactly. And your board would use it against me. I know. She looked relieved for half a second. Then I said, I've known all of that since the day we married. She went quiet. I sat up. I never asked you to announce me at a press conference. I never demanded a position at Meridian. I didn't even tell anyone you were my wife when people insulted me for being your assistant. Her eyes shifted. You remember that? Of course I do. I laughed softly. How could I forget? A memory came back. 3 years earlier, we had been standing beneath the old willow tree behind a small courthouse. There had been no photographers, no family, no flowers, just 2 cheap rings and a nervous Vivian who kept checking whether anyone had followed us. She had held my hand and whispered, Give me 2 years. I had asked, 2 years for what? To make Meridian stable. After that, I'll stand beside you in front of everyone. I had believed her. 2 years became 3. Then 3 became silence. Vivian sat on the edge of the bed. Adrian isn't what you think. I looked at her. I didn't say anything about Adrian. Her face froze. That was answer enough. I slowly nodded. You're right. What? I don't need to know. She looked almost offended. You should trust me. I did. The words came out quietly. That's the problem. She stared at me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. The name was visible. Adrian. She stood immediately. I have to take this. I didn't stop her. She walked toward the balcony. Before opening the door, she looked back at me. You'll delete the post, right? I thought about everything I had sacrificed. The dinners, the opportunities, the friendships I'd lost because I was always available for her, the little design studio I had once dreamed of opening, the career I had abandoned because Vivian had needed someone to help her through Meridian's financial crisis. I looked at her. No. Her eyes widened. What did you say? I said no. For the first time, something uncertain appeared in her expression. Maybe she had expected me to apologize. Maybe she expected me to chase her. Maybe she thought this was another argument that would disappear by morning. But I was tired of arguments. I reached for my phone and opened the post. The comments had exploded. Some people were laughing. Some were speculating. Some were asking who my mysterious wife was. And one comment had already gone viral. If you're really married to Vivian Luo, prove it. I looked at those words. Then at the woman standing in front of me. I had spent 3 years protecting her secret. Tonight, I realized something painful. I had been protecting a marriage that she wasn't protecting with me. I locked my phone. I'm going to sleep. She stared at me. You're really not deleting it? No. Why? I pulled the blanket over myself. Because for once, I want one sentence I wrote to be true. She stood there for a long time. Then she walked out. The bedroom door closed. And neither of us knew that by morning, that little post would become the first crack in the life Vivian had spent years building. Because someone had already recognized my name. And they had just sent a message to Meridian Holdings. Your CEO's secret husband isn't who you think he is. By 8 the next morning, my phone had become almost useless. Notifications filled the screen. Messages, missed calls, friend requests from people I had never met. Someone had taken a screenshot of my post and uploaded it to a business forum. The caption read, Is Vivian Luo secretly married? I stared at it while eating cold toast. For years, I had avoided attention. Now, in a single night, strangers were trying to uncover my entire life. I expected Vivian to be furious. Instead, at 8:17, she sent me one message. Vivian, come to Meridian. I didn't answer. At 8:31, she sent another. Vivian, this is serious. I put the phone down. There was a time when those words would have made me run. Not anymore. At 9:05, her assistant called. Mr. Sean, Ms. Luo wants you at the company immediately. I won't be coming. There was a pause. Sir, the board is meeting. I understand. They're asking questions about your relationship with Ms. Luo. I looked out the window. Then she can answer them. The assistant lowered her voice. Mr. Sean, some directors are saying you may have been using Ms. Luo. I almost laughed. Using her? I had spent 3 years hiding that I was married to one of the richest women in the city. If I wanted her money, I could have demanded far more than I ever accepted. I have nothing to explain, I said. Then I hung up. But at noon, the situation became worse. A news article appeared. Meridian CEO's mystery husband. Secret marriage or business scandal. Someone had leaked a photograph from our wedding. It was blurry, but our faces were recognizable. The article claimed Vivian had secretly married a little-known financial consultant named Ethan Shun. That part was technically true. What they didn't know was that I had stopped working as a financial consultant 2 years ago because I had joined Meridian during its worst financial crisis. And that was where another memory surfaced. 2 years earlier, Meridian had nearly collapsed. 3 major investors had pulled out. The company had billions tied up in a failed overseas project. Vivian hadn't slept for days. One night, I found her sitting on the kitchen floor of our apartment with financial statements scattered around her. "I can't save it," she'd whispered. I sat beside her. "Then we'll find another way." She had looked at me. "You don't understand. I understand numbers. You'll lose everything if you help me." I had smiled. "Then we'll lose it together." I spent 6 months rebuilding Meridian's internal financial model. I found a hidden liquidity problem. Then I discovered a pattern in the company's procurement contracts that no one else had noticed. The changes saved Meridian millions. Vivian had hugged me that night. She had cried against my shoulder. "How did you see this?" I remembered answering. "I just paid attention." Back then, she had kissed my forehead. "You saved my company." I never asked for recognition. I thought being her husband was enough. Now, sitting alone in our apartment while strangers called me a nobody, I wondered whether she had forgotten. Or worse, whether she had never truly understood what I had given her. At 3:40 that afternoon, someone knocked on my door. It was Adrian. I recognized him immediately. He stood in an expensive suit, carrying no briefcase. "I think we should talk." I stepped aside. He entered. His eyes moved around the apartment. "You live here?" I frowned. Obviously, he looked uncomfortable. "I didn't know. You're close enough to my wife to know where she spends her evenings, but you didn't know where she lived?" His expression changed. "I never intended to interfere in your marriage." "Then why were you holding her at the gala?" "Because she was upset." "About what?" He hesitated, then said, "About you." That surprised me. I said nothing. Adrian sighed. "Vivian told me your marriage was complicated. That's one word for it. She said you were considering leaving." I stared at him. I hadn't told her that. His face changed. "Then why did she say you were?" I didn't answer. Something cold settled in my chest. For 3 years, I had assumed Vivian was simply busy. Maybe she had been preparing everyone around her for a different story. One where I was the husband who couldn't understand her ambitions. The husband who eventually left. The husband whose disappearance would be convenient. Adrian stood. "I should go. One question." He turned. "Does Vivian love you?" His jaw tightened. "I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the truth." He walked toward the door, then stopped. "Whatever you think happened last night, Ethan, I don't think Vivian wants to lose you." The door closed behind him. I stood alone in the apartment. For the first time, I wondered if my wife was afraid of losing me. But then another thought followed. Maybe she wasn't afraid of losing me. Maybe she was afraid of losing the person who had always been there to save everything for her. And I didn't know which possibility hurt more. That evening, Vivian finally came home early. She placed her handbag on the table. Then she looked at me. "Did Adrian come here?" "Yes." "What did he say?" "That you told him I was leaving you." She froze. "I never said that." "Then why did he think it?" She looked away. I waited. This time, I didn't fill the silence for her. Eventually, she said, "Because I told him our marriage wasn't working." I nodded. "Wasn't working for whom?" "Ethan." "For whom, Vivian?" She closed her eyes. "For both of us." I felt something inside me go still. 3 years of memories suddenly seemed to rearrange themselves. The nights I waited. The excuses. The canceled trips. The promises. Maybe I had been the only one trying to keep the marriage alive. "I understand," I said. She looked surprised. "You do?" "Yes." "You don't have to make this dramatic." "I'm not." I walked into the study. On my desk sat an old wooden box. I opened it. Inside was my wedding ring. I hadn't realized I'd taken it off until I saw it lying there. Vivian followed me. "You took it off?" "I did." "When?" "Last night." She stared at the ring. "You never take it off." "I know." Her voice became softer. "Ethan." I picked up the box. "I think we should separate." She looked as though I had slapped her. "No." I stared at her. "No. You can't decide this alone." "Why not?" "Because we're married." I almost smiled. "That's interesting." "What?" "You remembered." Her eyes filled with anger. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Act like I never cared." I looked at her. I know you cared. That was the hardest part. If you never cared, leaving would be easy. She didn't respond. I continued. I know you worked hard. I know your family threatened you. I know Meridian needed you. I know there were things you couldn't tell me. Her expression softened. But I also know that every time you had to choose between protecting your company and protecting our marriage, you chose the company. That's not fair. It doesn't have to be fair. I put the ring back in the box. It just has to be true. She stepped closer. I can fix this. I looked at her. How? I'll tell the board about you. Today. She hesitated. Not today. When? After the annual shareholders meeting. When is that? 6 weeks. I laughed quietly. 3 years became 6 weeks. Ethan, please. She reached for my hand. I moved it away. That tiny movement hurt her. I could see it, but I couldn't undo it. I need space. Where will you go? I don't know. Then don't leave. Her voice cracked. It was the first time I had heard Vivian sound afraid. I wanted to stay. Every part of me wanted to. But I remembered the post. Single and available. I had written it as a joke. Now it felt like a warning I had accidentally given myself. That night, I packed one suitcase. Not everything. Just enough for a few weeks. Before leaving, I stood in the doorway and looked around our apartment. The blue mug she always used. The bookshelf we assembled together. The photograph from our secret wedding. The little plant she had nearly killed because she forgot to water it. So many ordinary things. So many memories. Vivian stood behind me. Where will you go? I'll find somewhere. You'll come back. I didn't answer. She whispered, you always come back. I looked at her. That's why you never learned to stop hurting me. Then I left. For the first time since our wedding, I walked out without promising when I would return. I rented a tiny room above an old bakery on the other side of the city. The room had cracked paint, a noisy window, and a mattress that felt like cardboard. It was the worst place I had lived in years. But that first night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I opened my laptop. For years, I had put aside an idea I was too afraid to pursue. A financial risk analysis platform designed for mid-sized businesses. I had built the original model while working at Meridian. I had never shown it to Vivian. Not because I didn't trust her, because I wanted one thing in my life that belonged entirely to me. I opened the old files. Then I smiled for the first time in weeks. Maybe I had finally found it. Not revenge. Not another marriage. Not a way to hurt Vivian. Just a reason to wake up tomorrow. I began working. And I had no idea that within 3 months, the little program I had built in secret would attract the attention of a company far larger than Meridian. 3 months after I left Vivian, I stopped checking whether she had called. That was how I knew I was changing. At first, every notification had made my heart jump. Then I began leaving my phone on silent. Eventually, I could spend an entire afternoon without wondering what Vivian Luo was doing. My new life was not glamorous. I worked from the tiny room above the bakery. Every morning at 6, the owner, Mrs. Han, would bang on my door. Ethan, your coffee is getting cold. I didn't order coffee. You didn't order breakfast either. That's why you're getting both. She was 70 and terrifying. I liked her immediately. She never asked why I had moved into such a cheap room. She never asked why I sometimes worked until 3 in the morning. She simply left food outside my door. Downstairs, the bakery smelled of butter and cinnamon. Upstairs, my laptop sounded like it was about to explode. I spent weeks rebuilding my risk analysis platform. The original version had been designed to detect financial irregularities before they became disasters. But now I wanted more. I wanted small businesses to use it. Companies that couldn't afford teams of analysts. Companies whose owners were too busy surviving to notice the numbers quietly killing them. I named the platform Northstar. It wasn't revolutionary technology. It was something more practical. It connected financial records, supplier contracts, payment schedules, and market changes, then flagged patterns that humans often missed. I knew it worked. But knowing something worked and convincing someone to pay for it were completely different things. My first pitch failed. The second failed. The third company laughed. Mr. Sean, the executive told me, if this system is as good as you claim, why aren't you working for a major corporation? I smiled. Because I don't want to. He laughed. I didn't. 6 weeks later, something unexpected happened. A logistics company agreed to test Northstar. Their finances were a mess. Invoices were duplicated. Several suppliers were being overpaid. Cash flow looked healthy on paper, but was actually collapsing. North Star found the problem in 4 days. The company avoided a major loss. The owner called me at midnight. Mr. Shun, what do you want? A chance. What? Give me 10 other companies. He laughed. You want me to introduce you to 10 clients? No. I looked at the financial report on my screen. I want you to introduce me to 10 companies that think they don't need me. That was the beginning. 1 client became 3. 3 became 9. Then 12. I hired my first employee from a university cafe. Her name was Mira. She was 24, brilliant, and incapable of pretending she understood something when she didn't. During our first meeting, she looked at North Star's architecture and said, "This is either genius or completely insane." Which one? I'm still deciding. You're hired. She blinked. Seriously? Yes. Why? Because you questioned it. She grinned. I like you. Don't say that too quickly. I take it back. For the first time in years, I had people around me who knew me simply as Ethan. Not Vivian's husband. Not Meridian's secret consultant. Not the man standing beside a powerful woman. Just Ethan. I didn't realize how much that mattered until one afternoon when Mira asked, "Were you always this stubborn?" I laughed. Apparently. She looked at me. Someone must have made you this way. I paused. Someone did. I didn't tell her who. I didn't need to. My past was no longer something I needed to explain to everyone. Meanwhile, Vivian's life was becoming increasingly complicated. I learned about it from business news. Meridian's stock had dropped after the secret marriage scandal. The board was questioning her judgment. Adrian publicly denied being romantically involved with her. Then the annual shareholder meeting arrived. I watched part of it online. Vivian stood beneath the Meridian logo. She looked calm, powerful, untouchable, but I knew her well enough to see the exhaustion around her eyes. A shareholder stood. "Ms. Luo, the public wants to know whether you have a husband." The room became silent. Vivian looked directly at the cameras. Yes. My chest tightened. My husband is Ethan Shun. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. She continued. We have been married for 3 years. The internet exploded. News channels replayed the statement. Social media filled with speculation. But Vivian wasn't finished. Ethan has never used my position for personal gain. In fact, during Meridian's financial crisis 2 years ago, he created the restructuring model that prevented the company from suffering a far greater loss. I stared at the screen. She had finally told them. 3 years too late. The room erupted in questions. Vivian raised her hand. And there is something else I need to make clear. She paused. Ethan left our home because I failed him as his wife. I shut the laptop. I didn't want to hear more. Not because I was angry. Because some wounds didn't need another explanation. I returned to work. But that night, an email arrived. The sender was unfamiliar. The subject line was simple. North Star, acquisition proposal. I opened it. The company making the offer was one of the largest financial technology groups in Asia. They wanted to buy North Star. Their offer was enormous. I read it twice. Then a third time. I had dreamed about success. I just hadn't imagined it would arrive this soon. But there was a problem. The company's CEO wanted to meet me personally. And the meeting was scheduled at a hotel owned by Meridian Holdings. I almost canceled. Then I realized I was still allowing Vivian to influence my choices. So I went. The hotel lobby was packed with executives. I walked through in an inexpensive dark suit. No security. No assistant. No entourage. Nobody recognized me. For once, I liked being invisible. The meeting room was on the 22nd floor. When I entered, a woman stood beside the window. She was around my age, maybe a little older. Short black hair. Gray suit. Calm expression. She turned. Mr. Shun. Yes. I'm Clara Wei. She shook my hand. I've been studying North Star for 2 months. Then you probably know more about it than I do. She smiled. I doubt that. We sat. She slid a folder across the table. We want to invest. Not acquire? Invest first. I looked at her. Why? Because your system isn't valuable because of the software. She tapped the folder. It's valuable because of the thinking behind it. That sentence caught me off guard. She continued. Your algorithm doesn't simply detect financial risk. It identifies behavioral patterns. I nodded. That's the point. Who taught you? Experience. She smiled. Someone once told me experience is what people call talent after they become successful. I laughed. I've never heard that. I just made it up. I liked her. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, she offered me something better than money. Control. She wanted North Star to remain independent. She wanted me to become CEO. I stared at the contract. You don't even know me. I know your work. That's not the same thing. No. She leaned back. But people are usually more honest in their work than in their interviews. I signed the preliminary agreement. When I returned to the bakery that night, Mrs. Han was waiting downstairs. You look different. How? Like someone finally told you you're good at something. I smiled. Maybe. She placed a bowl of soup in front of me. Eat. I did. That night, I opened my old wedding photograph. Vivian and I were standing beneath the willow tree. She was smiling. I remembered what she had whispered. Give me 2 years. I closed the box. I didn't hate her, but I didn't miss the person I had been with her. That was the difference. 2 weeks later, North Star officially launched. The media called me an overnight success. They were wrong. There was nothing overnight about it. I had spent years learning, years watching, years solving problems no one noticed. The world simply hadn't been looking at me. Now it was. Our first major contract was with a national manufacturing group. Then another. Within 6 months, North Star's valuation crossed a number I had once thought impossible. I moved out of the room above the bakery. But I didn't forget it. I bought the building, not to turn it into a luxury office. I kept the bakery exactly as it was. Mrs. Han cried when I told her. You bought my building? I bought mine. She smacked my arm. You arrogant boy. I laughed. Nothing changes downstairs. Good. Then she looked at me carefully. What about your wife? I was silent. She understood. Oh, there's nothing to talk about. That's not what I asked. I smiled. I don't know. She nodded. Then don't rush. That advice stayed with me. Because Vivian had begun appearing in the news again. This time, not because of scandal. Because she had started visiting businesses that North Star served. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Then I noticed something. Meridian had quietly become one of North Star's competitors. Vivian had instructed her team to study my company. Not attack it. Study it. Then one evening, I received an invitation. Meridian Holdings' annual Innovation Summit. My first instinct was to decline. Then I saw the guest list. Clear away. Several major investors. And Vivian. I almost deleted the invitation. Instead, I accepted. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted Vivian to see what she had lost. I accepted because North Star belonged in that room. And for the first time in my life, I was going to enter it without standing behind anyone. The night of the summit, I arrived 10 minutes early. The lobby was full. Executives turned as I walked in. Someone whispered my name. Another person said, "That's Ethan Shun." I kept walking. Then I saw her. Vivian stood across the room. Our eyes met. She stopped breathing. For 3 years, she had hidden me from the world. Now the entire room was watching her look at the husband she had once treated like a secret. And this time, I wasn't the man waiting for her to choose me. I was the man everyone else had already chosen. Vivian didn't move. Neither did I. The room around us continued as if nothing had happened, but for several seconds, all I could hear was the faint sound of glasses touching somewhere behind me. Then Clara appeared beside me. Ethan. I turned. Everything okay? Yes. She followed my gaze and understood immediately. Oh. Vivian finally walked toward us. She looked exactly as she had 3 years ago when we first met. Perfect posture. Controlled expression. Eyes that revealed almost nothing. Except tonight, I could see what everyone else couldn't. She was nervous. Ethan. Her voice was quiet. Vivian. She glanced at Clara. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were coming with someone. Clara smiled politely. I'm here for the investment panel. Vivian nodded. Of course. Her eyes returned to me. You look well. I am. There was an awkward silence. Then she asked, how is North Star? Growing. I've heard. I'm sure you have. She looked down briefly. I'd like to talk to you. I nodded. Not tonight. Her expression tightened. Please. There's a summit happening. I know. Then let's attend it. She looked as though she wanted to say something else. Instead, she stepped aside. All right. I walked past her. That simple moment affected her more than any angry speech could have. Because she finally understood something. I wasn't avoiding her because I was still desperately in love with her. I was simply no longer organizing my life around her. The innovation panel began 20 minutes later. I sat near the front. Vivian was on the opposite side of the stage. The moderator introduced several companies. Then he introduced North Star. Our next speaker is Ethan Shun, founder and CEO of North Star. The applause surprised me. I stood. As I walked onto the stage, I saw Vivian watching me. I adjusted the microphone. Financial failure rarely begins with one dramatic mistake. The room became quiet. It begins with small things people ignore. I spoke for 20 minutes. Not about Vivian. Not about Meridian. Not about my past. I talked about businesses, risk, employees, families, and the cost of pretending a problem doesn't exist because facing it is uncomfortable. When I finished, the applause was loud. I returned to my seat. Clara leaned over. "You're good. I've had practice." She smiled. Across the room, Vivian was still staring at me. After the panel, several investors surrounded me. One offered a partnership. Another wanted North Star in Europe. A third asked whether I planned to expand into healthcare. I answered each question. Then I felt someone touch my arm. "Vivian." "Ethan." I turned. "Can we talk now?" "5 minutes." She nodded. We walked onto a quiet balcony overlooking the city. For a while, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "I'm proud of you." I looked at her. "Thank you. You built all of this." "Yes." She smiled faintly. "I always knew you could." I looked away. "No, you didn't." Her face changed. "I did. You knew I was useful." She flinched. "That's not fair." "Maybe not." I rested my hands on the railing. "But it's how it felt." She looked at the city. "I thought I was protecting you." "From what?" "My family. The board. Everyone." I turned toward her. "You were protecting your position." She didn't answer. I continued. "You were afraid that if people knew about me, they would say you were distracted, weak, emotional, that your husband didn't belong in your world." Her eyes filled with tears. "I was afraid." "I know. Then why won't you understand?" "Because understanding you doesn't erase what you did." She wiped her cheek. "I never cheated on you." "I know. I never married Adrian." "I know. I never stopped loving you." That one hurt. I looked at her. That should have mattered. It did. Not enough. She closed her eyes. I remembered the night she had returned from the gala. The phone call. Adrian's name. Her excuses. And suddenly, I understood something I hadn't wanted to understand. The betrayal wasn't another man. The betrayal was that she had loved me while still making me feel like I was something she needed to hide. She whispered, "Can we start over?" I shook my head. "No." "Why?" "Because I don't want to." She looked stunned. "I thought you still loved me." "I do." Her eyes lifted. "But love isn't always a reason to return." She looked down. For a moment, she wasn't the CEO of Meridian Holdings. She was simply Vivian, the woman who had once held my hand beneath a willow tree and promised me 2 years. "I waited too long," she whispered. "Yes. I thought you'd always wait." "I did too." She looked at me. "Then what changed?" I smiled sadly. "Me." The next morning, Meridian's board announced an internal investigation. It had nothing to do with me. That was what made it worse. While Vivian had been focused on protecting the company from scandal, several senior executives had been manipulating supplier contracts. North Star had flagged unusual patterns in one of Meridian's subsidiaries months earlier. I hadn't known. But when the investigation began, those patterns surfaced. Millions had been diverted through shell suppliers. The scheme had been running for years. Some of the executives involved tried to blame Vivian. They claimed she had known. She hadn't. But the board didn't care about intentions. They cared about responsibility. Vivian stepped down temporarily as CEO. I heard the news from Clara. "Are you going to help her?" I shook my head. "No." Clara looked surprised. "Why?" "Because if I help her, she'll never know whether she survived because of herself." Clara nodded slowly. "That's probably the right answer." The investigation continued. Several executives were dismissed. One was prosecuted for fraud. Another was forced to repay part of the stolen funds. Vivian spent weeks rebuilding Meridian's leadership. No shortcuts. No secret help from me. For the first time, she had to carry the consequences without reaching for me. Meanwhile, North Star grew. We opened a proper headquarters. Mira became head of product development. I hired people who had once been ignored by larger companies. I created scholarships for students studying financial technology. And every month, I visited the bakery downstairs. Mrs. Hahn still complained that I worked too much. One afternoon, Clara joined me there. She looked around. "This place hasn't changed." "That's the point." She smiled. "I like it." "Why?" "Because everyone here knows who they are." I looked at her. She laughed. "Don't look so serious." "I'm not." "You are." She took a sip of tea. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead." "Do you still love Vivian?" I didn't answer immediately. Then I said, in a way. Clara nodded. That's complicated. Life is. Do you want her back? No. She smiled. Good. I raised an eyebrow. Good. Because I was going to ask you to dinner. I stared at her. She laughed. You look terrified. I'm not terrified. You are. I couldn't help smiling. Where? Anywhere that isn't a business meeting. That's a difficult requirement. Then try. I looked at her. For the first time, I noticed how easy it was to sit beside her. There was no pressure. No fear of saying the wrong thing. No hidden expectations. She didn't care about my connection to Vivian. She cared about what I wanted to build. Our first dinner lasted 4 hours. There was no dramatic confession. No sudden promise. Just conversation. And when she dropped me at the bakery that night, she said, I had a good time. So did I. Good. She started to leave. Then turned. Ethan. Yes. I don't need you to be over your past immediately. I was surprised. But I do need you to be honest with me. I can do that. Then maybe we'll see where this goes. She walked away. I stood there smiling like an idiot. It was peaceful. That was the strange part. Peace felt unfamiliar. A month later, Vivian asked to meet me. I agreed. We met at the same small cafe where we had first discussed marriage. She looked different. Not weaker. Just less guarded. She placed an envelope on the table. What is this? Our divorce papers. I stared at her. You filed? Yes. I looked at her. She smiled sadly. You said you didn't want to return. I don't. I know. She pushed the envelope toward me. I spent a long time thinking about what I wanted. And I wanted you to choose me. My throat tightened. But I finally realized that's not love. She looked down. Love isn't keeping someone beside you because you're afraid they'll leave. I said nothing. She continued. I made you small because I was afraid of what the world would think if you stood beside me. She took a breath. You were never small. I looked away. I know that now. I wish I had known sooner. So do I. She smiled faintly. Are you happy? I thought about Clara. North Star. The bakery. My team. The life I had built. Yes. She nodded. Then I'm glad. I looked at her. Vivian. Yes. You were important to me. Her eyes filled with tears. You still are. But I can't be your husband anymore. She nodded. I know. And for the first time, she didn't ask me to stay. That was when I realized she had finally learned how to love me, even if she had learned it too late. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Thursday morning. There was no courtroom drama, no angry argument, no last-minute attempt to change each other's minds. Vivian signed first. I signed second. When the clerk closed the file, 3 years of marriage became a thin stack of papers. I thought I would feel empty. Instead, I felt strangely calm. Outside the courthouse, Vivian stood beneath the awning. Rain fell between us and the street. She looked at me. That's it. I nodded. That's it. She gave a small smile. Take care of yourself, Ethan. You too. I started walking. Ethan. I stopped. She didn't come closer. She simply said, I'm sorry. I looked back. I know. Then I walked away. I didn't turn around again. That afternoon, Clara found me sitting alone in the North Star conference room. You look like someone who just finished reading the last page of a book. Maybe I did. Was it a good book? I thought about Vivian. The secret wedding. The promises. The loneliness. The years when I had confused patience with love. It was an important one. Clara sat beside me. Do you want to talk about it? Not today. Okay. She didn't push. That was one of the reasons I trusted her. She understood that silence wasn't always an invitation to ask more questions. Sometimes silence was simply silence. Months passed. North Star expanded into 3 countries. We opened a research division. Mira became a partner. And I finally started working on something I had dreamed about long before Vivian. A financial education program for young entrepreneurs. I wanted people to understand numbers before those numbers became disasters. We called it Second Ledger. The first workshop was held in a community center. Only 23 people came. I didn't care. One young man stayed behind after the session. Mr. Shunt. Yes. I thought I was bad at business. Why? Because I keep losing money. I smiled. Losing money doesn't mean you're bad at business. What does it mean? It means you haven't found the leak yet. He laughed. I handed him a notebook. Start here. That evening, I realized something. North Star had made me wealthy, but Second Ledger made me feel useful. And that feeling mattered more. Meanwhile, Vivian rebuilt Meridian. She didn't return to the CEO position immediately. Instead, She spent months restructuring the company. She removed executives who had abused their authority. She created independent oversight. She changed the way Meridian handled internal reporting. People began saying she had become a different leader. I believed them, because I knew what it meant to finally learn from pain. Then, 1 year after our divorce, I received an invitation. Not from Vivian, from Meridian Holdings. They were hosting a charity foundation launch. The foundation was being created in memory of Vivian's father. The project would fund financial education for low-income students. I almost declined. Then I read the program details. Second Ledger had been invited as a partner. I smiled. Of course. Life had a strange sense of humor. When I arrived at the event, I wasn't nervous. I walked through the entrance with Clara beside me. She wore a simple black dress. I wore a navy suit. The photographer asked us to stop. Mr. Shun, one photo? I hesitated. Clara looked at me. Your choice. I nodded. We stood together. The camera flashed. For years, I had been afraid of photographs. Because photographs reminded me of a life where I had to hide. Now I understood something. I didn't need to hide from my past. I simply didn't need to live inside it. Inside the ballroom, I saw Vivian. She was speaking with several students. She looked happy. Not the polished happiness she used to display at corporate events. A quieter kind. When she noticed me, she smiled. I smiled back. Then she looked at Clara. There was a brief pause. Not jealousy. Not anger. Something closer to acceptance. Later, Vivian approached us. Ethan. Vivian. She looked at Clara. It's good to finally meet you. Clara smiled. You too. Vivian turned to me. I heard Second Ledger is expanding. It is. You've done something wonderful. Thank you. She hesitated, then said, I wanted to ask you something. Go ahead. Would you speak at the Foundation's first student conference? I glanced at Clara. She smiled. You should. I looked back at Vivian. All right. Her expression softened. Thank you. She started to leave, then stopped. I meant what I said before. About what? That I was proud of you. I nodded. I know. She smiled. And I'm glad you stopped waiting for me. I didn't know what to say, so I said the truth. Me too. She walked away. Clara slipped her hand into mine. You okay? Yes. She squeezed my hand. Good. I looked around the ballroom. Students were laughing. Business leaders were talking. Volunteers were carrying boxes of books. Nobody cared about the secret marriage scandal anymore. Nobody cared that Vivian Luo had once hidden her husband. And strangely, that felt like freedom. Later that night, Clara and I stood outside beneath the city lights. Where do you want to go? She asked. I looked at her. Home. She smiled. Where's home? I thought about it. For years, home had been an apartment where I waited for someone. Now home wasn't a place. It was a feeling. Wherever we're building our life. Her eyes softened. That's a good answer. I took her hand. And this time, I didn't hesitate. A year later, Clara and I opened the first Second Ledger Learning Center. It was in an old neighborhood where most young business owners had never had access to professional financial advice. The building was small. The classrooms were simple. But every evening, they were full. Students came after work. Parents brought their teenagers. Shop owners came with folders of receipts. Some were afraid to admit they didn't understand their own finances. We never judged them. I knew exactly how shame could make people hide problems until those problems became impossible to fix. One afternoon, a young woman named Lila approached me. My father wants me to close our shop. Why? He says we're losing money. Are you? She handed me a folder. I spent an hour looking through the records. Then I found it. You aren't losing money. She stared at me. What? Your supplier has been charging you twice for certain deliveries. She looked shocked. That's impossible. Check the invoices. She did. Her eyes widened. You found it. I smiled. No. Your records found it. She hugged me before I could react. That evening, I remembered the younger version of myself. The man who had sat beside Vivian on the kitchen floor, staring at financial statements. The man who believed saving someone else's company would make them understand his value. I finally understood why that had been wrong. My value had never depended on whether Vivian recognized it. It existed before she saw it. And it remained after she left. That night, Clara and I had dinner at the bakery. Mrs. Han was still running the place. She was now 81 and still terrifying. She looked at Clara. When are you two getting married? I nearly choked. Clara laughed. We're discussing it. Mrs. Han slapped the table. Discuss faster. Mrs. Han. What? We've only been together 2 years. Your husband was married 3 years, and look how that turned out. I stared at her. Please stop using my divorce as business advice. She laughed. Clara rested her head against my shoulder. I like her. That's your first mistake. Mrs. Hahn grinned. The evening passed peacefully, until my phone rang. It was Vivian. I looked at the screen. Clara saw the name. Do you want to answer? I nodded. Hello. Vivian's voice was quiet. Are you busy? I'm having dinner. With Clara? Yes. There was a pause. Good. Why did you call? I wanted to tell you something. What? Meridian is donating a permanent fund to Second Ledger. I smiled. That's generous. It's not charity. What is it? An investment. I understood. She wasn't trying to buy her way back into my life. She was supporting something she believed in. Thank you. You don't have to thank me. I still will. She laughed softly. Then silence returned. I saw your engagement announcement. I looked at Clara. Her cheeks turned pink. We haven't announced anything. It's on the North Star website. I laughed. Of course. Vivian always did her research. Then yes. Congratulations. Thank you. Another pause. Are you happy? I looked around the bakery. At Clara. At the people laughing downstairs. At the life I had built. Yes. Vivian exhaled. That's all I wanted to know. Vivian. Yes. You'll be okay. She was silent. Then she said, I think I will. We ended the call. Clara looked at me. How do you feel? I considered the question. Nothing dramatic. That's good. Yeah. I smiled. I think that's what peace feels like. She took my hand. A few weeks later, we became engaged. I didn't post anything dramatic. Just one photograph. 2 hands. 2 rings. And a simple caption. Not a secret anymore. The comments exploded. Some people recognized the story. Some remembered the old scandal. Some wrote that Vivian had lost the best man she ever had. I deleted those comments because I didn't want my happiness to depend on her regret. Vivian eventually saw the photograph. She didn't comment. She didn't message. She simply sent one private line. I'm glad you found your home. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, so am I. And that was the end. Not because our history meant nothing. It meant everything. It taught me patience. It taught me love. It taught me that forgiveness didn't require returning. Most importantly, it taught me something I wish I had understood much earlier. Sometimes we spend years begging someone to make room for us in their life. Then one day, we walk away and discover an entire world was waiting for us to build our own. I had once written, single and available. Vivian had replied, false information. She had been right. I wasn't single. I had been married to her. But I had also been unavailable to myself. That was the real lie. The moment I left, I finally became available to my own dreams, my own choices, my own future. And when I eventually loved someone again, I didn't love her because I needed someone to complete me. I loved her because I had already learned how to stand on my own. That made all the difference. 5 years after I posted those 3 words, I received an invitation from Vivian. Not a business invitation. Not a request for help. A wedding invitation. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Vivian Luo was getting married. The man beside her wasn't Adrian. It was someone I had never met. The invitation was simple. No mention of her former marriage. No explanation. Just her name beside another man's. Clara looked over my shoulder. You don't have to go. I know. Do you want to? I thought about it. Yes. She smiled. Then we'll go. The wedding was held outside the city, in a quiet garden surrounded by old trees. It was nothing like the gala where our marriage had first become public. There were no cameras, no investors, no journalists, just family and close friends. When Vivian saw me, she smiled. Ethan, congratulations. She looked at Clara. Thank you for coming. Clara nodded. Thank you for inviting us. Vivian looked at our wedding rings. Then at me. You look happy. I am. She smiled. So do you. I am. For a moment, we stood silently. Then she laughed softly. Do you remember when we thought we had everything figured out? Unfortunately. She laughed again. I was 29 and convinced you could control everything. I was wrong. Very. She shook her head. You're still annoying. Some things don't change. Her husband approached. She introduced us. He was warm, relaxed, and completely uninterested in business. I understood immediately why she had chosen him. He didn't look at Vivian as a CEO. He looked at her as a woman. When he took her hand, she smiled differently. There was no calculation in it. No fear. Just peace. I was genuinely happy for her. During the reception, Vivian found me alone near the garden. I owe you an apology. I looked at her. You don't have to. I know. She paused. But I want to say it. I waited. When you posted that you were single, I was angry because I thought you were embarrassing me. She looked down. Now I realize I was embarrassed because the truth made me uncomfortable. What truth? That I had a husband I was proud of privately, but ashamed to acknowledge publicly. Her voice trembled. Not because of you. I know. Because I was afraid. I nodded. She continued. I spent years believing success meant controlling everything around me. She smiled sadly. Then you left. I said nothing. And when you left, I lost control. She looked toward the wedding guests. But I gained perspective. I smiled. That's something. She laughed softly. Do you ever regret leaving? I thought carefully. I regret that we reached that point. She looked at me. But I don't regret leaving. Her eyes filled with tears. I understand. Then she said something I hadn't expected. Thank you. For what? For not destroying me. I frowned. I never wanted to destroy you. I know. She wiped her eyes. That's what makes it harder. I smiled. You built your own life. So did you. Yes. She looked at Clara across the garden. She loves you. I know. And you love her. I do. Vivian nodded. Then go. I looked at her. Go where? Home. That word stayed with me. Because once, home had meant Vivian. Now it meant the life Clara and I had built together. I walked back to my wife. Clara took my hand. Ready? Yes. We left before the dancing began. On the drive home, Clara leaned against the window. You okay? I nodded. I think I finally said goodbye. To Vivian? To the version of me who kept waiting for her. Clara smiled. That sounds important. It is. We drove through the city lights. For years, I had imagined what would happen when Vivian finally regretted losing me. I thought I would feel powerful, vindicated, maybe even victorious. But standing there at her wedding, I realized something. Her regret wasn't my victory. Her happiness wasn't my defeat. My victory had happened years earlier, in a tiny room above a bakery, when I woke up and chose to work on something that belonged to me. It happened when my first employee believed in my idea, when the first client trusted North Star, when the first student told me I had changed her life, when Clara took my hand without asking me to become someone else. The real victory had been quiet, almost invisible. I had stopped making Vivian the center of my life. And somehow, that changed everything. 10 years after the night of that infamous post, I returned to the bakery one morning. Mrs. Hahn was gone by then. She had passed away peacefully at 86. Before she died, she left the bakery to the community foundation I had created. The downstairs space became a permanent second ledger classroom. The upstairs room remained untouched. I still visited sometimes. The cracked window had been replaced. The walls had been painted, but one old scratch near the desk remained. I had made it years ago while moving my suitcase. I ran my fingers over it. That room had once been the place where I thought my life had fallen apart. Now I knew it had been the place where my life began again. Clara walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. You're getting sentimental. I might be. She handed me one. That's dangerous. I survived. She laughed. We sat beside the window. Our daughter was downstairs with a group of students. She had recently started volunteering at Second Ledger. She was 19, smart, stubborn, and far too good at arguing. Sometimes she reminded me of Vivian. I never told her that. She would have been offended. Dad, her voice came from downstairs. I looked over the railing. What? Can you come check something? Coming. Clara smiled. Go. I walked downstairs. My daughter stood beside a whiteboard covered in numbers. She pointed at the calculations. Something doesn't make sense. I looked at the board, then smiled. You're right. What did I miss? I picked up the marker. This. She leaned closer. How did you see that? I paused. For a moment, I remembered the man I had been 10 years earlier. The husband who believed being needed was the same as being loved. The man who thought if he stayed patient enough, someone would eventually recognize his sacrifices. I looked at my daughter. Because I learned to pay attention. She smiled. Can you teach me? Of course. I stood beside her. Outside, the city moved on. People hurried to work. Cars passed. New businesses opened. Old ones disappeared. Life kept changing. And somewhere in that same city, Vivian was living hers. We never became enemies. We never became close friends. We simply became two people who had once loved each other and eventually learned how to let that love become history. Sometimes I heard about her. Meridian was thriving again. She had become known for rebuilding the company with stronger ethics. She funded scholarships. She supported women's entrepreneurship. She rarely gave interviews about her personal life. Once, a journalist asked her about the story that had made her famous years ago. The secret husband. The social media post. The woman who had publicly called it false information. Vivian had smiled. I was right. The journalist laughed. Really? Vivian nodded. He wasn't single. Then she added, but I learned that being married to someone and truly making space for them in your life are two different things. That interview went viral. I watched it once, then closed my laptop. Not because I was hurt, because I didn't need anything more from the story. I already had my ending. That evening, I sat on the bakery steps with Clara. She rested her head on my shoulder. You ever think about how different things could have been? Sometimes. What if Vivian had told everyone about you 3 years earlier? I smiled. Then I might never have built North Star. What if she had chosen you? Maybe I would still be happy. What if you had never made that post? I looked at the street. Then maybe I would have stayed silent longer. Clara squeezed my hand. And what if you had never left? I answered without hesitation. Then I wouldn't be the man sitting here. She smiled. Good answer. I looked at the bakery sign. The old wooden letters were still there. Hans Bakery. Underneath was a smaller sign. Second Ledger Community Center. 2 names from 2 different chapters of my life. Both mattered. Neither owned me. I once believed walking away meant losing everything. Now I understood. Sometimes walking away is how you finally discover what was yours all along. My talent. My ambition. My dignity. My ability to love. My future. None of those things had been given to me by Vivian. And none could be taken away by her. I had forgiven her long before her wedding. Not because what she did was acceptable, but because carrying anger forever would have meant letting her remain the center of my life. I didn't want that. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want her to suffer. I didn't want her to regret me forever. I simply wanted to live. And I did. I built a company. I built a foundation. I built a family. I found someone who never asked me to hide. Most importantly, I built a life that didn't require anyone's permission to matter. Years ago, I had posted 3 careless words. Single and available. Vivian had replied. False information. She was right. I had been married. But the deeper truth was that I had spent too long unavailable to myself. Now I was available to every dream I had postponed. Available to the people who loved me without conditions. Available to a future I could choose. And if someone ever asked me what happened to the man who used to wait outside his wife's office, hoping she would finally acknowledge him, I would tell them this. He stopped waiting. He walked away. He built something of his own. And somewhere along the way, he realized he had never needed to become important to the people who underestimated him. He only needed to become important to himself. That was the life I chose. Not revenge. Not bitterness. Not a second chance at the past. Just peace. And for the first time, peace was enough.